The goal in Jiu-Jitsu is to submit your opponent without them submitting you. But imagine you're in a tournament. You have multiple divisions you're going to have to go through, and the first match, you break your arm. This happened to Basalt's Ben, but his warrior spirit, or something else, kept him going, and let's see how he did in his second match.
Ben's mentally preparing himself for the match, and there's no way he was going to go out with another loss. He was ready for his second round in the absolute blue belt division, and other than his arm was clearly injured, there was another big problem. Ben was banking on people not being that big despite being an absolute, and this guy was the biggest one yet. And something I don't think Ben is used to is that his opponent looked calm and collected. So of course Ben was going to be Ben, and he had to make this a hype match so he could get his own style working for him. And he does that by shooting underneath him, driving into his knees, and then getting sprawled out on. But his opponent actually helps out Ben because he throws him over his shoulder, but Ben winds up on top. From here, all Ben has to do is push the legs off of his head, and now he's on top in side control until his opponent rolls towards the turtle. Then Ben shows off some of his past experience as a wrestler as he's sprawling out looking for the front head. I wish he knew a guillotine because that would have been the perfect setup, but instead he was able to snap him then go behind. His opponent tries to take a page out of my book by going towards the guillotine, but Ben is clearly much faster, so he wasn't able to maintain control. But it worked well for him because he was able to retain guard. And despite Ben being in full guard, he's going for a headlock pass, and his opponent is able to catch the other arm, trying to break that off him as well. It's looking dire for Ben having such a large opponent on top of him, but he's able to rotate to his belly so he can give his opponent his back. Now Ben's opponent isn't controlling the arms enough, so Ben is able to spin into him and he winds up in top guard. Now even if you aren't the coach for Ben, it is such a hard attack to watch him roll because the positions are changing so fast and he's giving up good things, and he's still able to escape the bad positions as well. Ben's opponent could do much better here by getting off his hips. When your hips are on the mat, that means they're dead hips and you can't climb with them. And Ben's goal here is that he wants to keep driving with his right hip into his opponent. That will keep his opponent's hips on the mat, and then he can take top guard. Ben is doing a nice job applying pressure to his opponent, but if he could do a backstep like Keenan here, then he could easily pass over his opponent's guard, not worrying about these butterfly hooks. Instead, he opts to pin his opponent by going for that chest-on-chest pressure. But this can be dangerous to do to a larger opponent because it's much easier for them to hit a bridge and roll escape on you. But his opponent is smart enough to start turning to his side, so this is going to make it harder for Ben to keep him flat. Now I love to trap the arm by using my shin to cover it, but Ben tries to improve on my technique by stomping on it instead, but his opponent just pulls it away. His opponent is also doing a nice job controlling Ben's right leg. He's pulling it against Ben while at the same time trying to roll it the opposite side. But Ben continues to drive forward too far, and then his opponent is able to shove his arm out of the way, and he keeps rotating his hips while controlling Ben's arm to take top mount. His opponent is even posting on his bad arm, so Ben decides to roll to his stomach instead, which generally is not a good choice, but it works out best for Ben because he has so much experience escaping from here. And I do want to point out that his opponent has really good control over his arms. He has Ben's left wrist controlled, so he could quickly shoot in for a rear naked choke if Ben would let go of his hand. Now here's the nasty part. Ben's opponent decided to wake up this morning and choose violence for his submission attempt. He goes straight to WWE and he throws Ben into a full Nelson, and this might be the deepest full Nelson I've ever seen. But this is not Ben's first time here. Tanner couldn't get him with the same submission, so Ben must have the most flexible arms and shoulders I've ever seen. But his opponent doesn't know that, so he may gas himself out just trying to go for the submission. Now what I like to see from his opponent is that he's always trying to look for control. Ben is the antithesis of this, always trying to hunt for the submission, but his opponent's doing a nice job taking the back, slowing the roll down a little bit, and then once he has a strong position, then he can set up his submission attacks. But he keeps letting his hooks drop way too low, and this allows Ben to spin out of his control, and now Ben is in top guard. Those lazy hips will definitely get you in trouble in a match. But he hits a great dummy sweep on Ben, and now we have a new battle I've never seen Ben put in before. They're going to the legs. Now it's not that you can't finish an ankle lock how Ben has it, but it's going to be really difficult because he doesn't have any control over that leg other than when he's holding onto it with his hands. But at the same time, his opponent controls his knee, so this could be dangerous for him really quickly. But then we have to remember this is a blue belt match and not a black belt match. The footlock game isn't nearly as developed for these two, so Ben lets go and he decides that he's going to maintain control on top of his opponent. But that doesn't mean his opponent is done with him yet. He's still attacking the leg, and he actually has a really solid position until Ben is able to use his other leg to kick free. And I'm starting to think that Ben's opponent is getting fatigued because he didn't try and stand up or get on top of Ben. And as Ben is unleashing his ruthless energy, he does one fatal mistake. He attacks the head once again, which is going to have his back taken as his opponent is able to push the arm by. Personally, I'm tired of watching Ben have his back taken. it's a heart attack every time he's competing because I really want him to win, but he has to stop using the headlock every time he wants to try and pass the guard. But as fate would have it, his opponent decides he's going to try and roll Ben backwards until Ben is able to use his cat-like reflexes to catch himself. We're still caught in this vicious trap of watching blue belts scramble. And with enough scrambling, it put Ben in a great position where now he's working on his opponent's turtle. I'm yelling at him to try and do something to crack the turtle, such as a crossface or pulling up the ankle, but Ben decides he's going to just try and ram into him instead. But if it wasn't obvious enough, his opponent is very large. Being that large is going to make it tough just to try and drive him over with horsepower. And since he can't go forward, he's going to pull him backwards instead. His opponent starts off pretty well by keeping the knee and elbow close to each other, but Ben's able to throw his hooks in, so it didn't last too long for that defense. Now, I've never seen Ben finish a rear naked choke, so it doesn't surprise me that he wants to try and go on top instead for mount, but it was a sloppy transition, so this allowed his opponent to time him well, and he was able to catch him in half guard. And as if Ben didn't have enough to deal with, now he had to try and keep his shorts up at the same time. If you're scared about your shorts falling down, make sure to check out my link in the description below so you can get great fitting gear from xmartial.com with promotion code Tyler10. Now, despite us telling Ben to use an underhook instead of going for the headlock, it's actually going to work out for him. His opponent's doing the right thing, trying to take his back as Ben is passing, but Ben has better pressure than he does. He's able to pass the legs by, and now he's finally worked into side control and he's already working from the scarf hold. Now, if you've been here as the guy on bottom, this is when you need to panic. You need to get out of here as fast as you can, because if Ben can get his leg over that wrist, it's basically a guaranteed submission. His opponent should be trying to rotate to both sides so he can build momentum, but Ben has other plans for him. Ben, the man with one broken arm, is about to change everything. He's pushing the arm down, brings the leg over, and he gets a quick submission with the Americana in the last 20 seconds and avoiding overtime. It may have been messy, but Ben achieved victory in the blue belt division against a 4-stripe blue belt. Congratulations to the People's Champ.